may I ask Martina to take the floor and make the presentation on behalf of the Adaptation Fund Secretariat.
Well, first of all, I would like to take the opportunity also to thank the Standing Committee of Finance and the sponsor for organizing this important forum. I'm really pleased to have this opportunity to talk to you a little bit about the Adaptation Fund. As a fully operational financial mechanism, the Adaptation Fund has been explicitly mandated to finance concrete adaptation projects in developing countries. Because of the mandate, all Adaptation Fund projects include concrete activities, and in most cases, that means also infrastructures of some sort. At the same time, we have to acknowledge that the resources of the Adaptation Fund are limited, and the board has wanted also to ensure equitable access to all eligible parties, which has meant putting in place the US 10 million country cap in 2011. This, in turn, has dictated that the Adaptation Fund has not been able to finance very large-scale infrastructure. Nevertheless, as of today, we have been allocating 436 million in 67 countries, of which 15 are small island developing states and 26 least developed countries, for a total number of 66 concrete adaptation projects. This pie chart shows that the Adaptation Fund investment cover pretty equally a diverse range of sectors and has more than 5.4 million direct beneficiaries. It is important also to recall that the Adaptation Fund gives freedom to countries, to country governments to decide on priority sectors and also a region. Just to briefly mention where the Adaptation Fund is positioned, it is, well, recently the Adaptation Fund has developed its medium-term strategy, which will be approved at an upcoming board meeting in October in Bonn. And there it specifies also the alignment of the Adaptation Fund with SDGs. Of course, directly it aligns with the Climate Action 13, but also with many other SDGs. For example, SDG 16 is connected because it refers for us to direct access, of which the Adaptation Fund has been pioneer. This facilitates, of course, strengthening of national institutions, creating ownership, and also ensuring direct responsibility for national government in implementing projects and programs. Also, it aligns with the Paris Agreement, especially Article 2, and with Sendai Framework for Action. We have been talking about resilient infrastructure, but how in the Adaptation Fund we try to finance projects that imply building resilient infrastructure. First of all, we have to think of what kind. Infrastructure can be seen in comparison to other type of solutions. For example, hard and soft adaptive measures, building a seawall or deciding instead of planting mangroves. It's important to recall that the Adaptation Fund has mostly experience of local solutions that have an impact at community level. Some of them do include considerable engineered infrastructure, while many other projects focus on community level, community prioritized, and often community-built small-scale infrastructure. For example, improved irrigation systems, micro-dams, gabions, where to build infrastructure in prioritized areas and for whom tackling the most vulnerable. As Bernarditas and other colleagues said yesterday, it's really difficult to, sometimes it's a challenge, having infrastructure in prioritized areas with high interest of return, and this might sometimes contradict the focus on most vulnerable. In the Adaptation Fund project, we consult local people to see how the most vulnerable will benefit from infrastructure. This is an imperative to get funding from the Adaptation Fund. For example, in project in Jamaica, Tanzania, federal states of Micronesia, and Senegal, where you can see this picture of seawall that was constructed in Rufisque village. This is to say that in the Adaptation Fund, we try to look at the balance between supporting the most vulnerable, not looking necessarily at returning investments, but building, of course, infrastructure that will be sustainable with adequate maintenance. With whom facilitating and encouraging private sector partnership is a challenge. In many states, defining what is the responsibility of state and private sector, for example, in protection of cost management is really a challenge. But how to cope with this? Private sector could be made aware of climate risks and see their own investments into mitigation of risks as part of their business plan. Is also a matter of arranging responsibilities of both parties up front. How, taking into account also climate change long-term forecast, even though the choice of the approach is always up to the government and should depend on local circumstances, there are still gaps, we acknowledge, in meteorological data due to insufficient, for example, station networks in many developing countries. But the Adaptation Fund has supported also updating meteorological services, has supporting activities to concrete investments. I would like just, oops, not the first, yeah. Just to briefly mention an adaptation story in Georgia. This project was recently finalized. It was implemented in 5 years. From 2012 to 2017 for a total grant of $5.3 million US. The implementing entity was UNDP and the executing entity the Ministry of Environment through the national environmental agencies. Project activities in this case facilitated a partnership between sectors, capacity building to use climate data, and cooperation between local and national government. The challenge that we still see is how to make risk an opportunity, trying to engage more private sector. But as outcomes of this project, for example, they were able, through thanks to international expertise, they were able to establish community-based flood insurance schemes. Those are not institutionalized because government has financial constraints. But the project created a simulation of insurance premium according to flood risk area and as an innovative element. Then there are also new building codes reviewed and streamlined for housing rehabilitation schemes, thanks also to flood maps and landslide maps in one of the municipalities, which are now used also to determine strategic planning. Then we have a number of direct intervention for long-term flood prevention and risk mitigation. As I said before, a combination of soft and hard measures. Municipalities are now responsible. For example, in many municipalities, riverbank protection have been built, and municipalities are now responsible for maintaining their own structures as part of their municipal budget. And we have been talking with many municipalities, and they have committed part of their municipal budget to take care of this community infrastructure. Then there were systems established at national and subnational level, led by national environmental agencies for long and short-term flood forecasting. So thanks to the project, there was introduction of modeling software. But we acknowledge that there is a need for replication also to other river basins, because this project was focused on Rioni River Basin, which is one of the most vulnerable river basins in Georgia. The project also focused a lot on capacity building, training governmental staff, but also local authorities on how to use and also read these flood zoning maps that are now being used in municipalities. As a benefit, a number of 203,000 direct beneficiaries have been benefited of this project. Here you have just two pictures. The first is a project beneficiaries that we accidentally met along the road, was not planned, and he shared with us the positive impact of riverbank protection measures. As he was saying, the colleague, about the importance of road accessibility. Well, this man happens to have cultivated fields above of the hill that you see in the picture. And he was just sharing with us that with the landslides, he could not be able to access his land. And so he was sharing the positive benefits of the project with these riverbank protection measures. But I would like just to conclude saying that while there might be technical solution for infrastructure to withstand direct climate changes, for example, in the case of the project, riverbank protection in Georgia, feasible and efficient technologies may be missing for certain geographic regions. Especially, there is still a lack of information on how climate resilience for infrastructure can be achieved at system level. For example, at city level or river basin. In Georgia, for example, there was the issue of availability of land for implementing soft measures as an alternative to hard measures. Ultimately, we should also think about the interconnected, interlinked natures of climate direct inputs and also indirect inputs that influence what is possible to be conducted and done in a specific context. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Martina, for this presentation.